Humans are afraid of the dark. We always have been. It's wired into us, an instinct older than language, older than fire. We are afraid of drowning. We are afraid of the cold. We are afraid of being watched by something we cannot see. And we are afraid, more than almost anything else, of being hunted. For us, these are fears. Brief, occasional, almost always survivable. For the creatures of the deep ocean, they are simply Tuesday. Every nightmare the human mind has ever produced about the dark, the cold, the crushing unknown, somewhere below the surface of our own planet, something is living through it permanently. Not as a moment of fear, as a baseline condition of existence. We've mapped the surface of Mars in better detail than we've mapped our own ocean floor. Less than 5% of the deep sea has ever been seen by human eyes or cameras. Everything below that threshold is conjecture, sonar shadows, and the occasional creature that washes up dead on a beach, already half dissolved by the simple act of existing somewhere we were never built to go. This is not a tour through zones and depths the way scientists map them. This is a descent through the fears themselves, the ones humans carry around like background noise. And what happens when you meet the animals that live inside them permanently? At the surface, light isn't something you think about. It's just there, free, constant, doing its job without being asked. Drop below 200 meters, and that changes. You're entering what scientists call the twilight zone, and despite the name, there's nothing romantic about it. The sun's rays get weaker and weaker until they simply give up. Below this point, there is no photosynthesis, no plants, no green energy of any kind. Just the slow, endless drift of dead organic matter falling from above, fragments of plankton waste, the remains of dead animals, tiny particles of everything that lived and stopped living closer to the surface. Scientists call this marine snow. To us it sounds poetic. Down here it is the only food chain that matters. If you were dropped into this layer of ocean without equipment, your eyes would do what human eyes do in true darkness. Nothing useful. No amount of waiting for them to adjust would help, because there is no light to adjust to. The darkness here is not the darkness of a room with the lights off. It is a physical fact, permanent and complete. The animals living here solve this problem in two opposite and equally unsettling ways. Some went invisible. The glass squid and the glass octopus have bodies so transparent you can see directly through them, organs and all, as if the ocean itself has tried to erase them from existence. No one fully understands why. It may be camouflage against the faint filtering light from above. It may be metabolic. Every pigment costs energy to build and maintain. And in a world where energy is scarce, even color becomes a luxury some creatures simply cannot afford. Whatever the reason, the result is an animal that looks less like a living thing and more like an idea of one, present, but barely. Others did the opposite. They made their own light. Bioluminescence sounds almost magical until you understand what it is actually for down here. Not beauty, not display, but survival taken to its most ruthless form. The firefly squid covers its belly in light-producing organs and carefully tunes their brightness to match the faint glow filtering down from the surface far above, erasing its own silhouette so that predators looking up from below cannot pick it out against the light. It is not glowing to be seen. It is glowing to disappear, using light as a form of invisibility, which is either deeply clever or deeply strange depending on how much you've thought about it. The bloody bellycomb jelly takes this further. It glows deep red, but red light doesn't penetrate to these depths. So to every other eye in this layer of ocean, the jelly simply looks black, invisible, and it hides bioluminescent prey inside its own stomach, concealing the glow of what it's already eaten so that predators can't detect it from the inside out. It is an animal that has solved the problem of light from every angle simultaneously. Then there is the deal vertical migration, which is what happens when you add all of this together and multiply it by billions. Every single night, as darkness falls above the surface, an enormous portion of the twilight zone's population rises. Lanternfish, squid, jellyfish, shrimp, a vast upward movement toward the surface to feed under cover of darkness. At dawn, they sink again, retreating back into the gloom before the light returns. This daily migration is the largest synchronized movement of biomass on Earth, larger than every herd, every flock, every swarm on land combined. And it happens twice a day, every day, in near total silence. Science missed it entirely until World War II, when naval sonar operators kept picking up a mysterious false seafloor, a dense layer that rose every night and descended every morning as if the bottom of the ocean were breathing. It wasn't the seafloor. It was life, organized around a single shared fear, the fear of being visible. This one compounds the further down you go. Past 1 kilometer, all remaining light disappears and you enter the midnight zone, a permanent, unbroken darkness that has existed, without interruption, since long before humans appeared on this planet. The dragonfish lives here, and it has evolved something that should not be possible. It produces red bioluminescence. Red light, at this depth, is invisible to almost every other animal in the ocean. No eye down here has evolved to detect it because there was never any red light to evolve toward. Which means the dragonfish has essentially invented a private wavelength, a searchlight that only it can see, that it uses to hunt in total secret. It illuminates prey that has no idea it is illuminated. It sees creatures that cannot see it back. It is the deep-sea version of a nightmare, being hunted by something operating on a frequency you don't even know exists. Other predators skip light entirely. Some fish in the midnight zone have evolved what scientists describe as ultra-black skin, material so efficient at absorbing light that it reflects less than 0.5% of whatever touches it. Shine a submarine spotlight directly at one of these animals, and it will barely register. It simply swallows the light and gives nothing back, a shape in the darkness defined only by what it absorbs. Even knowing they're there, even looking directly at them with powerful artificial light, they are almost impossible to see. Think carefully about the specific fear of knowing something is nearby in the dark while being unable to see it, while it, on the other hand, can perceive you without difficulty. That is not a horror movie scenario down here. It is the standard arrangement. It is how the ecosystem is organized. And then the anglerfish, which takes the fear of the unseen watcher and layers something worse on top of it, the fear of being drawn towards something dangerous by the appearance of safety. The female dangles a glowing lure directly in front of her own mouth, using the promise of light, the one thing every creature down here is calibrated to find significant, as a trap. Animals that have survived crashing pressure, permanent darkness, and scarce food are undone by a single glowing point of light, because in this environment light means so much that the instinct to approach it overrides almost everything else. The male anglerfish adds a different dimension of dread. Born small and essentially helpless, his only biological purpose is to find a female in a lightless ocean so vast that the odds against finding anything specific should be insurmountable. When he does locate one, he bites into her body and begins to fuse with her, his skin merging with hers, his organs dissolving one by one, his circulatory system absorbed into hers until he is no longer a separate animal at all, just a permanent attachment, a functioning sac of sperm kept alive by her blood. His eyes go, his fins go, his brain reduces to its most minimal function. Two animals that found each other in the dark become, literally, one. And it is one of the strangest and most extreme biological adaptations anywhere on Earth. For kilometers down, the ocean floor levels out into the abyssal plain, a permanent, freezing desert of mud and silt where the water pressure reaches an unimaginable 4 tons per square inch. That is the equivalent of an elephant standing on your thumb, or having an entire fleet of commercial airplanes stacked directly on your chest. The ocean here is a physical vice, trying to compress life out of existence. To survive without being flattened into liquid dust, the creatures here had to abandon the very structures that define surface animals. They have no lungs to collapse. Their bones are soft, pliable cartilage. They are made of watery, gelatinous flesh, melting, ghostly entities that look terrifying to us because they are literally engineered to live inside a trash compactor. And in this vice, the rules of scale completely shatter. This is the birthplace of deep-sea gigantism. Due to the freezing temperatures and near-total lack of nutrients, metabolism's slow to an absolute crawl. Creatures live for centuries, growing to monstrous, distorted sizes compared to their shallow-water relatives. Here, tiny surface bugs evolve into foot-long, armor-plated giant isopods scavenging the dark. Food is so rare that a predator might only encounter a meal once every few weeks. Missing a single strike means starvation. Because of this, the abyss produces the most aggressive, uncompromising weaponry on Earth. This is where you meet the viperfish and the fangtooth, animals whose heads are almost entirely composed of oversized, unhinged jaws and needle-sharp, inward-curving teeth. They cannot afford to hunt. They simply wait in the freezing dark. And once something enters that mouth, the teeth lock like an iron cage. It is physically impossible to swim back out. It is a one-way trip into a living grave. Beyond the abyssal plain, the ocean floor tears open. Tectonic plates collide, one sliding beneath the other, dragging the seafloor down into depths that no longer operate by the rules of the rest of the planet. These are the trenches, the Hadal Zone, named, without any attempt at subtlety, after Hades, the underworld of Greek mythology, the place the dead go and from which nothing returns. The deepest of these trenches reaches nearly 11,000 meters. If you placed Mount Everest at the bottom of the Mariana Trench, its summit would sit more than a mile underwater. The pressure at these depths exceeds 1,000 times what a human body experiences at the surface. Exposure would be fatal before the mind had time to register what was happening. And life is here anyway, not just surviving, but organized, structured, thriving on its own terms. Snailfish inhabit the very bottom of the deepest trenches, pale, gelatinous, almost translucent, looking far too fragile for a place that would destroy any equipment not specifically engineered to withstand it. They are the deepest living vertebrates ever recorded by science. Their bodies survive because of specialized molecules, trimethylamine oxide, primarily, that keep proteins from misfolding and collapsing under pressures that would denature almost any other biological structure. They don't just tolerate the crushing weight of the water above them. They are chemically built around it, as if evolution looked at a pressure that should be a hard limit and decided to incorporate it into the architecture instead. Amphipods swarm the trench floors in vast numbers, and they carry something that should not be there, plastic fibers and traces of persistent industrial pollutants in their bodies and digestive systems. These chemicals have no natural source at the bottom of the Mariana Trench. They arrive the same way everything else arrives in the deep, by falling slowly from the surface, absorbed into dead organic matter, carried down through the water column over years and decades until they concentrated in a place humans had never physically visited. We contaminated the deepest point on Earth before we ever set foot in it. That fact sits uncomfortably somewhere between environmental tragedy and a strange kind of dark comedy about how thoroughly a single species can alter a planet without trying. Along the hydrothermal vents that open along trench walls, the rules change completely. Here, superheated water laced with hydrogen sulfide, methane, and dissolved metals pours out of the Earth's crust, and microbes feed on the chemistry itself, not on sunlight, not on anything that has ever been touched by a sun. They are the foundation of entire food webs, tube worms 3 meters long, clusters of mussels and clams, pale crabs moving through clouds of bacterial mats. A complete ecosystem running on geochemical energy, disconnected from the sun entirely, proof that photosynthesis, the process almost every other complex food web on Earth depends on, is not actually a requirement for life to organize itself into something complicated and interconnected. This is what makes the Hadal Zone genuinely important beyond the spectacle of its depths. Icy moons in our own solar system, Europa orbiting Jupiter, Enceladus orbiting Saturn, are believed to contain liquid oceans beneath miles of frozen crust, warmed not by a sun, but by tidal heating from the gravitational pull of their parent planets. If life exists on those moons, it will look nothing like life at the surface of Earth. It will look, in all probability, more like what lives at the bottom of the Mariana Trench than anything else we know. Every dive into the Hadal Zone is not just a study of extreme Earth biology. It is a rehearsal for what finding alien life might actually require us to understand. Fewer people have visited the Mariana Trench than have walked on the moon. Here is the part that should unsettle you more than any single creature in this video. Every fear we've walked through, the dark, the watcher you cannot see, the crushing empty cold, the trench with no name for what it does to a body. None of these are rare events down there. None of them are exceptional circumstances. They are the baseline. They are what the environment simply is every moment for the majority of life on this planet. More than 80% of our ocean remains unexplored. Every ROV expedition, every crude dive, returns with something that didn't have a scientific name before that day. Transparent fish with no pigment whatsoever, worms that glow in colors no surface animal produces, jellyfish with body plans that seem to ignore fundamental rules of bilateral symmetry that almost every complex animal on land follows without exception. Even in the species we do know, the questions outnumber the answers by a ratio that should be embarrassing given how long humans have been studying biology. Why does the deep sea produce giants when scarcity should, logically, select for smaller, more efficient bodies? Why do so many species invest in transparency or ultra-black skin in an environment that already has no meaningful light? Why has bioluminescence evolved independently dozens of separate times across dozens of completely unrelated lineages, in an enormous variety of wavelengths, and for an enormous variety of purposes, including some purposes we still haven't fully worked out? Nearly 3/4 of all deep-sea life produces its own light, and we cannot yet give a complete account of why evolution built that capability so many times, in so many different ways, in a place where the darkness should have made light irrelevant. The deep sea is the largest habitat on Earth. It covers more of this planet's surface than all land environments combined. It contains the majority of Earth's living space by volume, and we have seen less of it than we've seen of the surface of the moon, a dead rock in space with no atmosphere and no possibility of surprise. We built submarines to survive a place our bodies were never designed for. We built cameras sensitive enough to detect bioluminescence in total darkness. We built vehicles that can withstand pressures that would collapse anything not specifically engineered down to the material science of every individual component. We did all of this to look at something that has been living, hunting, glowing, dissolving its own males, growing to enormous sizes, contaminating itself with our waste, and dying in complete silence since long before the first human being looked at the ocean and wondered what was in it. The deep sea does not need us to discover it. It does not need us to name it or document it or protect it, though it very much needs that last one now. It has been operating on its own terms, by its own rules, under pressures and in darkness and at temperatures that would end a human life in seconds, for hundreds of millions of years before we showed up on the surface and started making fires. We are not the ones who belong down there. We never were. And the part of the ocean we haven't seen yet, the 80%, the vast lightless majority of the largest habitat on Earth, is not waiting for us to find it. It is simply continuing, as it always has, doing things we don't have names for yet, in the dark, at depth, under pressure, at a pace that makes human history look like a single afternoon. That's the fear underneath all the others. Not that the deep sea is dangerous, though it is. Not that the creatures down there are strange beyond easy comprehension, though they are. But that there is an entire world, larger than everything we've ever walked on, that has never needed us at all, and is getting along perfectly fine without us knowing it exists. If you want to see what else is hiding in the dark parts of this planet, subscribe and turn on notifications, because the next one might be even worse than this.